Canine German Shepherds discovered a forest ranger bound to a tree. Their actions were remarkable. Next will evoke deep emotions. A highly skilled team of canine German Shepherds was on a engaging in my usual workout amidst the snowy peaks. An extraordinary event unfolded. Their handler, momentarily distracted, lost sight of them. The dogs, driven solely by intuition and devotion, strayed into the dense forest. That's when they spotted him, a man, barely conscious, bloodied and bruised with chains biting into his wrists as he hung helplessly from a frozen tree. It was a forest ranger who remained. In the desolate expanse, where silence reigned, the dogs chose a path unexpected. Rather than fleeing or howling into the void, they engaged in an act that defied all anticipation. What followed was a sequence of actions that were remarkably precise, deeply moving, and truly profound. It moved experienced officers to tears. This isn't merely a tale of endurance that imparts a profound lesson on trust, bravery, and the intricacies of human resilience. At times, those we believe require our support the most are, in fact, the ones who ultimately. Before we dive in, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up and activate notifications. This is how we keep sharing these remarkable tales of the unwavering loyalty, remarkable resilience, and the extraordinary bond that exists between humans and dogs, transcending all challenges. The snow had been falling for hours, blanketing the trails of Bitter Creek National Reserve in a shimmering white. Not many dared to venture into this part of Wyoming in the dead of winter, except for rangers like Thomas. At the age of 42, Jack had dedicated decades of his life to safeguarding the land, wildlife, and the individuals who traversed it. Yet today, he was not on duty. He wasn't monitoring poachers or assisting lost hikers. He was bound to a tree. Breath came in sharp, frigid gasps. Blood trickled from Ajax's temple, cascading down, chilled to the bone. His frost-bitten cheek bore the weight of heavy chains that encircled his chest and arms, pinning him against the twisted pine as if he were an extension of it, his wrists secured. Behind him, the skin was already raw, split open from the struggle. His uniform was shredded, drenched in a blend of blood and thawed snow. He was numb to the sensation in his fingers, could hardly cling to awareness. It had been 2 days, since he had been ambushed. He recalled the voices, angry and muffled beneath ski masks. They sought entry to the reserve land for unlawful hunting, logging, and other activities. Otherwise, wealth could procure what lay hidden, but Jack stood firm, leading them to set a precedent. Abandoned in the woods, he was left to freeze, destined to vanish without a trace. Yet, something was approaching. Initially, it was merely a murmur carried by the breeze, then gentle thuds echoed as they crunched through the snow. Jack opened his swollen eyes. Was it another hallucination? The cold had been toying with him for hours. He squinted, attempting to distinguish the vision from the foliage. It was then that he noticed them. 5 shapes loomed ominously against the white expanse, gliding with a deliberate calm. Initially, a wave of panic washed over him. Chest wolves, his thoughts raced back to past survival lessons. Remain motionless, do not display fear. Yet, as the figures approached, he recognized that they were not wild predators. They were dusk German Shepherds, canine South. Their coats were heavily blanketed in snow. Their eyes were keen, glimmering like gold, and sharp. Each one of them advanced with determination, not aimlessly but like warriors on a quest. One among them, the one that stood out, moved forward and inhaled deeply. He fixed his gaze on Jack, and then something astonishing occurred. The dog remained silent. He did not bark. He sat directly in front of Jack, ears perked and chest puffed out, resembling a proud statue. Then another approached, sniffing the base of the tree. One began to circle the area, while the others spread out, in a formation that appeared strategic. These dogs weren't wandering. They were skilled. Jack felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes, a blend of emotion and something deeper. The wind carried his silent words, and though he couldn't articulate them fully, he managed to whisper, "Good boys." The alpha shepherd, marked by a scar over his left eye, stepped forward and sniffed at the chain. He barked once, short and sharp. It echoed through the trees. Jack was uncertain if anyone would listen. Yet the dogs responded. They started to react, began to excavate the snow surrounding the chain, uncovering the padlock. Another leaped up, barking at the heavens. It felt as if they were aware of the necessary actions to take. Time stretched endlessly as Jack floated between awareness and oblivion. Yet just before darkness enveloped him once more, he perceived distant voices, footsteps. Darting through the trees, a sudden voice pierced the air, urgent and clear. "I see him over there." Here, Jack barely raised his gaze. Amidst the swirling snow and the haze of agony, he caught a glimpse. A figure in a police uniform, accompanied by several aides, emerges from the trees. The dogs had accomplished it. They had summoned assistance. Yet, as Thomas's sight started to, as he faded away, he caught one final glimpse of the alpha canine, standing merely a few feet away, gazing at him. Not with curiosity, not with confusion, but with comprehending. And then Jack lost consciousness. Jack regained awareness to the pungent aroma of antiseptic and the faint sound of a heart monitor. His body ached in 1,000 places, as if someone had driven nails into every bone and nerve. He blinked slowly. The harsh fluorescent, the light from the ranger station's infirmary pierced his eyes. It was warm in this place as well. Warm after days in the freezing wilderness. His skin felt like it was thawing in the sun. A nurse appeared beside him. "You're safe now," she said softly. "You're lucky. They discovered you just in time." Jack attempted to speak, but his voice emerged as a mere rasp. "Where are the dogs?" She smiled. "They are outside, the K9 unit that discovered you. They've been waiting, particularly one of them. The large one marked by a scar." Jack allowed his head to rest against the pillow. It wasn't just a dream. The kinds were indeed real. Later that day, Sheriff Dalton arrived. His face displayed a blend of relief and suppressed anger. Dalton was a rugged man in his 50s. He stood strong and steadfast, much like an oak tree. "Grady," he said in a rough tone. As he drew a chair nearer, he remarked, "You've got one incredible tale to share." Jack nodded. Slowly. "How did they find me?" Dalton leaned back, arms crossed. "Our K9 team was conducting a winter training circuit in the eastern woods. They became separated from their handler after an unexpected snowfall. We believed they were gone for good until they found their way back, but not to the checkpoint. They returned to the main station, barking like a mole covered in snow. One of the handlers, Sarah Harris, sensed that something was amiss. She had a deep-seated trust. They loaded the ATV and followed along. They brought her directly to you, Thomas." He closed his eyes, feeling his chest tighten. "They saved my life," he said, and Dalton nodded in agreement. "Yeah, but here's where it takes an unexpected turn." He retrieved a folder from beneath his arm and unfolded it. Inside lay a map of the forest. With hand-drawn notes, you found yourself bound to a tree in a sector long forgotten, untouched by patrols for over 5 years. No active presence. Paths devoid of campsites, absent of fire roads. The one responsible for this to you was fully aware. Where to dispose of someone they wished to keep hidden. Jack tightened his jaw. Unlawful. "They aimed to silence me. They nearly succeeded." Dalton murmured, "We'll discover the truth." However, there was something more. Dalton rose and swung the door open to the hallway. A moment later, a large German shepherd padded in, calm and steady, his scarred eyes revealing a story of resilience. Still sharp, he paused in the doorway, ears perked, then strode directly to. Thomas settled onto his bed, resting his head softly on the mattress. "Meet Valor," Dalton said. An 8-year-old decorated military K9 retired from service following his handler. Was killed overseas. Since then, he has struggled to adjust. He doesn't have faith, yet for some inexplicable reason, he selected you. Jack extended his hand, trembling, and gently touched the dog's thick neck. "Valor." He closed his eyes and leaned into the touch as if it were the sole warmth he had ever experienced. Sarah Harris, the handler, entered next. She was in her early 30s, with deep brown eyes and snow blonde. With her hair pulled into a tight braid, she remarked, "Valor's never acted like this before." Voice brimming with wonder. Not since he lost his companion. It's as if something shifted within him as he discovered you." Jack glanced from her to the dog, His heart weighed down. It wasn't merely another rescue for him. He truly grasped what I was experiencing, Rachel. He remained by your side the entire time, refusing to budge until we carried you away. By sledge even then, he continued to glance back at you, as if uncertain about our potential together. Trusted Jack gazed at Titan. You rescued me. You selected me. Yet, just as that warmth, as I settled in, the door burst open once more. A constable stood there, his face pale and his voice trembling. Sheriff, there seems to be an issue. We've discovered fresh tire tracks close to Sector 12 and chains were recently severed. Someone was present there last night, and Dalton's expression revealed much. Hardened, they returned. Jack sat up, pain flaring through his ribs. They believe. I'm still out there. They're tying up loose ends. The room went silent. The allure stood, ears sharp, tail rigid. Something was approaching. The ranger station had never. It was a serene moment, with snow gently cascading outside in soft, rhythmic waves, blanketing the trees in a delicate layer. A pristine blanket of white covered the ground, yet an undercurrent of tension lingered heavily in the atmosphere. Deputies murmured in hushed tones, and Sheriff Dalton had remained in the comms room ever since the new tire was found. Tracks whatever was unfolding beyond whoever had returned. They were far from done. Jack perched on a wooden bench. Beside the window, he was cocooned in a thermal blanket. His hands remained bandaged, and deep bruises marred his skin. His jaw and ribs felt different, yet his mind was clearer than ever. An unsettling sensation lingered, one he couldn't quite dismiss. The forest was holding its breath. Something lurked beneath the silence. Titan lay at his feet like a sentinel, always alert, never drifting into slumber, yet quietly consuming, inhaling with a calm and measured rhythm. The scar across his eye gave him an intimidating presence, but to Jack, it revealed a deeper narrative of pain. Indeed, yet there's also the aspect of survival. Sarah Harris slipped in quietly, clutching with a steaming mug of coffee in hand. She asked, still refusing the painkillers. As she raised an eyebrow, Jack took the cup, his fingers brushing against hers. They make my head foggy. I can't afford that right now, she said, sitting beside him and keeping her voice low. We're involving federal investigators. This situation transcends mere poaching. It's too organized, too meticulous. A figure possessed maps, equipment, and the audacity to abandon a man to his fate. Jack cast his gaze downward. At Titan, someone had erred. Rachel followed his gaze towards Valor. He was never meant to be there. None of them were, yet they discovered me. They weren't supposed to. They were lost. Rachel looked confused. No one had sent them. Jack leaned in, forward slightly. Then something else occurred. There was a pause, not one of uncertainty, but, in a moment of clarity, Rachel reflected on the years she had dedicated to training K9 for my units. She understood when something transcended understanding. He hasn't departed from your side even once, she said gently. Even when I call, he awaits your approval. Jack looked at the dog. He brings to mind the type of ranger I once knew, to exist prior to all this, steadfast, unwavering, eternally alert. Rachel hesitated, then asked, do you think he could work with you? Jack blinked. What do you mean he's retired from the force? Technically. Excessive trauma, they remarked. Yet Valor has never formed such a connection with anyone like this. If you wish to retain him, it would require both of you to train and cultivate that partnership. Yet it seemed he had already made his choice. Jack remained silent initially, his gaze fixed on the dog that approached. His gaze unwavering. There was an unspoken connection between them. Something more profound than words could convey. Then Thomas whispered, if he's willing, I won't let him go. Just then, a sudden bark shattered the silence. The stillness was brief, orchestrated by Titan. He rose quickly. With muscles tense, ears perked, and nose held high, Rachel sprang to her feet. What is it, boy? Another bark, this time louder and more urgent. Then came a faint noise. The sound of metal clashing echoed from the rear of the structure as Jack remained steadfast, pushing aside the ache. Shouting beneath him, that was the garage door, he exclaimed as he reached for the radio. From the bench, before he could key it, the power went out. Everything plunged into darkness. Rachel pulled her. The flashlight's beam sliced through the room in a trembling cone. "Stay here," she uttered. "I'll check it out." Yet Titan emitted a low, guttural growl as he shifted towards. "Block the door." Rachel froze. Thomas's voice was calm. "He doesn't want you to. Venture forth alone." Beyond the glass, a figure glided by. Just a fleeting glimpse, too swift to comprehend. Then followed the shattering sound of glass breaking at the far end of the station. Rachel lifted her radio. "We've got an intruder to the south," she announced. "Entrance repeat south entrance yet." Before she could complete the call, a loud bang reverberated through the hall as Jack instinctively grabbed the closest weapon. An old one. Hatchet on the wall. They needed to move. Titan was already ahead, leading the way. With keen eyes and a low stance, they glided silently through the corridor beyond the sleeping quarters and the mess hall. The backup generator had not. Each step resonated like a ticking clock, building anticipation. Suddenly, it pierced the silent sea of voice, deep and low. "Close. I told you he wouldn't die out there." Thomas's blood turned to ice. They had returned, and this time, there would be no witnesses left behind. The sound of footsteps reverberated against the chilly concrete barriers, measured and intentional. Whoever occupied the ranger station, there was no rush. They exuded confidence, perhaps too much. Thomas held on tightly to the hatchet. Tightened. Every muscle in his battered body ached, but adrenaline surged through him. Overcame the agony at his side. Titan glided like a specter. With each step measured and quiet, Rachel followed closely behind. The torch beam sliced through the dark hallway in brief, deliberate flashes. Her sidearm was drawn now as they advanced. The supply room was first empty, then the south hallway fell silent, and then came the unmistakable sound of breathing, not theirs, coming from behind At the door to the generator room, Jack raised a hand to signal for silence, his ears attuned to Valor's presence. His body twitched, stiffening as he felt trapped. Jack leaned in closer to Rachel and whispered, "We open that door. We don't know what's waiting. You ready?" Rachel nodded, her finger tightening on the trigger as Jack took a deep breath and kicked the door open. Nothing. The generator room was empty. At least the beam from Rachel's torch cut through the darkness, illuminating the area and exposing tools. A broken chair and more. An overturned oil can, and then a flash of steel back. Rachel exclaimed just as a figure sprang from behind the generator, brandishing a crowbar. Jack ducked just in time. Time seemed to stretch as the metal sliced through the air where his head had just been. Titan wasted no time. He surged forward with an intensity that was nothing short of terrifying. Precision jaws clamped down on the attacker's arm, forcing the crowbar to fall with a clatter. The man screamed in fury, not dread. Foolish creature. Yet Titan refused to release. Jack seized the man's other arm was seized, and he was forcefully slammed against the wall, pinned down. "You were meant to finish me off, and so you just walk away, huh?" he growled. The intruder struggled, but with Thomas's weight and with Valor's grip firmly in place, he stood no chance as Rachel swiftly secured the man with handcuffs, reading him his rights with a calm demeanor. But as the man spat blood onto the floor, he smirked. "You think I'm the only one?" Jack stood still. "Check the perimeter," Rachel commanded. They abandoned the man, leaving him bound, and hurried back into the corridor outside. The flickering beams of light played across the horizon, revealing a flurry of activity and shifting silhouettes. Then gunfire echoed, pop, 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 from the west side. The deputy's voice crackled over the station radio. "They're breaching the vehicle garage." Jack turned to Rachel. "They're no longer present for me. They're here to wipe away everything." Titan growled once. "Observe." With intensity and haste, sprinting towards the main entrance, Jack trailed closely behind. With a sense of unease, he glanced through the side window and spotted two masked figures infiltrating the garage. Armed and ready, one of the snowmobiles was already hot-wired and humming. "They're planning. We need to escape through the North Ridge," Rachel said. "If they get into those woods, we'll never find them." "Thomas," she glanced at Valor. "Can you stop them?" Just then, as if in response, Titan surged forward. Emergency exit. His paws barely grazed the surface as he disappeared into the snowy. In the shadows, Jack and Rachel hurriedly took cover behind him, the sound of snow crunching beneath their feet echoing in the stillness. The wind howled through the trees, echoing in the clearing beyond the garage headlights. One of the intruders suddenly appeared, having climbed onto the snowmobile and revving it with reckless abandon. But just as he turned to speed away, Titan collided with him mid-chest. The man screamed as he was hurled from a vehicle came to rest in a snowdrift. The second figure lifted a weapon, but Thomas, with remarkable speed, he threw the hatchet, and the handle collided with the gunman's end, sending. The weapon soared through the air as Rachel lunged at him, and moments later, the confrontation concluded just as swiftly. As it commenced, deputies arrived moments later, securing the remaining intruders with handcuffs. And securing the scene, Jack stood in the snow, his chest heaving. His clothes were, his body drenched and trembling. He caught sight of Titan. The dog approached him, limping, a bullet lodged within. Grazed just above his leg, yet still proud, still standing. Jack dropped to his knees in. The snow fell softly as Titan approached, arms wide open, resting his head against Thomas's chest. "You saved us," he murmured. Again, Jack whispered, holding him close. "You saved everyone." Yet, as the moment lingered, Jack sensed a profound change stirring within him. This was no longer merely a matter of rescue. This was about purpose. The ranger station was once again secure, but the air inside had shifted. Deputies moved. Whispering carefully, the prisoners were divided and removed into custody, and Titan received treatment for his wound, a clean graze that hadn't penetrated muscle but still warranted attention. With a bandaged leg and a hero's rest, Jack sat beside him on the floor in the medical bay. His hand gently rested on the dog's chest, feeling Valor's rhythmic breathing. His eyes were calm and rhythmic, fixed on the door as if he anticipated further danger. Thomas didn't feel secure, not yet. Rachel slipped in softly, clutching a file brimming with incident reports indicate a refusal to communicate. She spoke in a low voice, stating, "All three of them. No names, no prints in the system, no ID." Jack frowned. "That doesn't make sense. They were aware of the landscape, our patrol timings, and even where the generator was situated." Rachel paused for a moment before offering him a smaller folder. "That's why I took this from the logs." Observe the date. Jack accessed it. His eyes narrowed. For weeks ago, a civilian contractor was granted short-term access to the north side of the reserve. Name, Jack. Melton. Purpose, maintenance of equipment for the wildlife cameras. The only issue was that Jack he never approved it, and the signature on the form wasn't his. He looked up at Rachel. "Someone forged this." Rachel nodded. "And not just anyone, but someone with internal clearance." Thomas's jaw tightened. This originated from within Rachel, but she remained silent. She did not respond. That night, after the station had settled into silence, Jack ventured outside for some fresh air. Snow continued to fall gently, covering the world in a false sense of tranquility as Titan moved with a limp. Beside him, the tail swayed softly, the nose twitched as he scanned the horizon, and they spotted Sheriff Dalton, solitary and resolute, positioned near the northern boundary, gazing intently into the woods. Jack paused. "That's strange." Dalton turned at the sound of footsteps and offered a strained smile. "Rest eluded me as well." "Something along those lines, Thomas." With narrowed eyes, Dalton gestured towards the trees. "Funny, isn't it? After all these years out here, the greatest danger was never the animals." Jack remained silent, prompting Dalton to let out a sigh as he moved forward. They were merely attempting to negotiate, unaware of how far they would go. "Far? Chain you up like that? That wasn't part of the plan." Jack froze. The words sank in, gently like a creeping shadow. "You," he murmured. "It was you." Dalton's face contorted, not with guilt, but with sheer exhaustion. "You were. In the manner you consistently obstructed permits, delving into reports that were intended to remain hidden. They proposed financial incentives merely to turn away. That was all it was meant to be." Thomas's hands tightened into fists. "You abandoned me to my fate." Dalton's response was icy. "I never believed you'd make it." One might not have anticipated that storm. Then he looked at Titan. But I hadn't expected it. He let out a low growl, his body rigid. Dalton took a slow step back. Look, you. Step back from this, and I can guarantee that no further issues will reach you. You end. That dog deserves a medal, retiring early and remaining a mystery to everyone. But Jack was already shaking his head. You really believe I'm going to remain silent after all that Dalton's done? His hand moved to his belt, but it was too slow. Titan lunged before he could draw. The sheriff fell to the ground with a grunt, pinned down by 100 pounds of trained strength. Yet, this time, Jack didn't hold back the dog. He moved closer and met Dalton's gaze. Eyes filled with betrayal. You broke your vow. You turned against me. By the time Rachel and the deputies arrived, upon arrival, the truth was already beginning to unravel as Jack presented the forged document. Rachel examined the station logs, and Titan remained by Thomas's side. Observed each action. The individual who had guided them for more than 10 years was taken into custody quietly. Yet, as the doors shut behind Dalton, Jack understood that the wounds cut far deeper than mere betrayal. He shifted his gaze to Rachel. Everything he touched is tainted. Every permit, every report. We must act. Rachel nodded, signaling a fresh beginning. Then we do this together. Jack cast his gaze downward at Titan, and not without him. Yet, something within Titan had shifted. That night, he walked back and forth. The station walls seemed to pulse with energy. His instincts were keen, and his ears were perpetually attuned to the surroundings. Jack settled beside him. As the fire crackled in the background, you sensed it before any of us. You felt it. Titan didn't, yet his gaze remained fixed on the shadows beyond. An instinct whispered to Thomas, this wasn't over. The days that followed were thick with silence and a blanket of snow. Investigators arrived from the state capitol, meticulously examining every corner of the ranger station and unearthing permits, unearthing the past and uncovering the deceptions that Dalton had concealed for years. Truth emerged in pieces, revealing a web of illicit land transactions that created pathways for criminal factions and rangers who had subtly been marginalized or muted. Jack delivered statement after statement, his voice unwavering, yet his eyes revealed a weariness. The sting of betrayal lingered in his thoughts like a persistent ache. He had placed his trust in Dalton for years. They had collaborated. Side by side, we constructed cabins, battled fires, and yet the man, the one who had once given him his badge, had abandoned him to perish, bound like a beast. Yet, Titan remained steadfastly by his side. Not a single moment did he stray. He accompanied Jack through each and every interview, each briefing, each quiet midnight stroll through the snow. Deputies are no longer saw him merely as a dog. They started to regard him as a comrade, a sibling, something between man and myth. On the third night following Dalton's arrest, Jack lingered by the fence. The perimeter of the station grounds was defined by the clear sky above, where the stars shone brightly for once, glimmering icily above the treetops. His breath escaped in languid puffs. Rachel, she approached quietly. They're offering you a transfer, she said. Back to Helena, full benefits counseling desk job. Jack paused, his gaze drifting down at Titan, who rested at his feet, tail wagging once as their eyes locked. Do I look like someone who belongs behind a desk? He said finally. Rachel gave a tired smile. Didn't think so, he added. She cast a quick look at her. They won't back down, will they? Rachel's smile lingered, faded. No, there's an abundance of wealth hidden within these trees. Too many names remain unspoken, remained undiscovered, with countless still lurking in the shadows. Jack nodded slowly. Then stay. Rachel handed him an envelope. She thought you might say that this is your official transfer into the K9 division if you desire it. Valor has been cleared for reactivation under your command. With careful hands, Jack opened the envelope. Inside lay a pristine file. Valor is the name assigned to the unit, designated as Ranger Tactical K9 Unit Echo. Do you really think I'm qualified? He asked. Rachel glanced between him and the dog. Jack knelt beside Titan, gently running a hand down his thick fur. What do you say, partner? Titan barked softly, a low, confident sound, the sound that affirmed it. Yet, as time went on, the tranquility seemed to wane. That feeling observed, deputies noted unusual occurrences. Imprints in the snow that seemed out of place. Gear shifted from its original position. Brief flashes of radio static during the night. No definitive findings, but sufficient to disturb even the most experienced rangers. Then, late one evening, Jack found himself, while reviewing reports in solitude within the communications cabin. The security monitor suddenly flickered with static before plunging into darkness. I attempted to restore the connection, but an obstruction interfered with the signal. At that moment, Titan stood alert, ears perked and muscles taut. Moments later, the emergency lights outside flickered to life as Jack stepped out. Into the cold, torch in one hand, service weapon at his hip, Titan trotted, with the tail low and the nose pointed into the wind. They arrived at the boundary of the station's fence. Nothing but snow on the trees. Quietude, yet suddenly a gentle noise. The metallic rattle of clinking chains echoed, a haunting reminder for Jack and his. As he lay there, drifting into slumber, he suddenly turned to his right, catching a glimpse of a figure swiftly disappearing behind a tree. "Hey," he called out. Jack called out, "Show yourself." Silence lingered, broken only by the soft murmur of the wind. The snow titan let out a low, protective growl, and just as the figure began to fade away, deep in the shadows, a flash of silver shimmered under the moon's glow. A badge. Thomas felt a chill run through him. It wasn't finished. There was a presence from within, another force at play. Still out there, observing. Jack hardly found rest that night, the vision of the enigmatic badge lingering in his mind. Flashing in the moonlight haunted him. He understood its significance. Dalton wasn't acting alone. There was someone else in uniform, someone with clearance and access was still operating from within. By sunrise, the snow had ceased its descent, leaving the forest wrapped in an unsettling stillness beneath a muted winter sky. Rachel gathered her thoughts, crafting a brief reply. The group, yet the marks left by the intruder had been skillfully concealed. Whoever had approached the station with a level of precision reminiscent of a well-coordinated operation. Yet, Jack remained unable to. He felt the weight in his chest shift as he glanced at Titan, who had remained fixated on the tree line since the previous night. The connection they shared had evolved into something more profound than mere instinct. It was trust, meticulously crafted. In survival, Jack grasped Titan's feelings without the need for words. Something was. Later that afternoon, Jack and Rachel made their way to one of the inactive patrols. Cabins perched on the brink of Sector 9, a realm seldom explored during the winter months, where Dalton had made his mark. Concerns about the cabin's safety for winter use were raised months ago, yet no one has questioned it since. Yet, an instinct whispered to Jack that this was the beginning. Upon their arrival, Valor awaited, leaped from the rear of the truck before it had fully halted. He inhaled deeply, his hackles bristling within. The cabin, the wood stove, was cold, yet recent footprints marked the snow just outside. And the lock had been damaged and quickly fixed. Rachel unsheathed her weapon. "We are not." Quietly, Jack moved alone, with Titan at his heel, each step carefully measured. They reached. In the back room, it happened. Nth gunshot. It shattered the silence, splintering the cabin's wooden frame. Rachel ducked behind the door while Jack dove to the side. But the bullet wasn't intended for them. It struck Titan. A sharp yelp shattered the silence as the dog fell to the ground. Jack scrambled towards him, his heart racing, as he noticed the blood streaming from his leg. Urgently, he whispered, "Stay with me, buddy. Stay with me." As he pressed his hands over the wound, the shooter stepped into view, unmasked. A young constable, Chris Howie, one of Dalton's loyal associates. He sneered, "You should have remained dead, Ranger." He spat the words out with disdain. Believing that imprisoning Dalton would change anything was naive. He was merely a figurehead. "I was the architect of it all." Jack rose gradually, blood staining his hands. His hands. "You shot him. You shot my dog." Didn't flinch. "That dog cost us everything." Rachel moved quietly behind him through the side hallway, unnoticed by Thomas. He kept him talking. "Why, Harry? Why betray your own?" He smirked. "You think this land means? To the government, it's merely property. I turned it into something profitable, but at what cost? Jack asked. Lives honor your badge. Don't pretend like you wouldn't have acted the same way. Hi, she hissed. That was the moment Rachel took 2 swift steps forward, and a swift strike to the back of Haley's knee sent him crashing to the ground. She had him restrained before he could even attempt to reach for anything. His weapon slipped from Jack's grasp, landing at Valor's side, as panic surged within his chest. The dog was breathing, but just barely. We need to move now, Rachel said. I'll summon the evacuation team. Jack carefully enveloped Titan in his jacket, lifting him with care into his arms. Don't you give up on me, he whispered. Not. Hours later, the veterinary unit at the state K9 center confirmed that the bullet had narrowly avoided Valor's vital organs. Surgery would be necessary, but he would endure. Jack remained at his side throughout the ordeal. The tale of the bound, the story of the ranger, and the cat who rescued him spread rapidly, capturing the attention of news crews and their cameras. Rold and Jack gave interviews not as a victim, but as a representative for those who shield, support, and give of oneself without seeking recognition. When Titan ultimately, after the surgery, he slowly opened his eyes and fixed his gaze on Jack, giving a subtle wag of his. It was sluggish and weary, yet it was present. Jack smiled despite the tears. You're coming home, partner. Weeks went by as the forest transitioned into spring, and a new patrol unit was established. Refined, scrutinized, and forged from the remnants of treachery. Jack was appointed as the leader of the ECIC 9 task force. Rachel ascended to the role of chief of station operations, while Titan made his return to in the field, older yet a bit slower, but undeniably stronger than ever. With each patrol, they walked side by side, shoulder to shoulder, and each individual they safeguarded understood that if peril ever approached once more, devotion would stand ready, with keen eyes and an unwavering heart that refused to surrender. If this, a tale that resonates with you, reminds us that genuine bravery doesn't don a costume, it strides on 4 legs. Support the channel by subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing. Your engagement means everything. This video featuring an individual who must embrace the concept of loyalty.